FC Bayern München have gone international. Welcome to South Korea. Welcome to the wonderful island of Jeju. And after a 4-day training camp in Tegernsee in the south of Bavaria, the German record title holders now embark on an 8-day tour of Asia. Vincent Kompany and his charges landed in South Korea yesterday. 4 hours later, they were out on this training pitch for a light session. Today, they once again will take to the pitch at the Jeju World Cup Stadium as pre-season preparations continue in earnest. Bayern have 2 friendlies lined up. You can, of course, catch both on FC Bayern TV+. The first tomorrow against local side Jeju SK. And then to cap off the Asia Tour, a match against Aston Villa, the Europa League champions, in Hong Kong on Friday. Well, the fact is, the start of the 26-27 season is now just a few weeks away. These players cannot wait. Vincent Kompany cannot wait, and I'm sure you, the Bayern fans, can also not wait. My name, James Thorogood, your host for this live training session, extending the warmest of welcomes to you, the Bayern fan base across the globe. Thanks for joining us on whatever platform you have chosen to join us on. As you can see, a smattering of local fans have made their way out to the Jeju World Cup Stadium to see Bayern München's stars in action. Of course, due to the World Cup, the stars returning have been drip-fed back into pre-season. For Bayern, it all started without many recognised senior squad players and a host of young teenagers. Several of those teenagers have made the trip to South Korea for this Asian tour. But while Bayern were enjoying the wonderful weather at Tegernsee, they were there joined by the returning German internationals, including Manuel Neuer there on the left of your screen, as well as Min Jae Kim, the South Korean superstar who certainly is the most sought-after Bayern player here on these shores. And the other player that returned at Tegernsee was Hiroki Ito, and now for the trip to Asia, the trip to South Korea, Konrad Laimer, Josip Stanisic and Luis Diaz all joined up for the journey. But there is, or are, a couple of names still missing, and one there on the left of your screen. Harry Kane, Michael Olise and Dayo Upamecano are yet to return from their post-World Cup holiday. Meanwhile, there are a smattering of players working their way back from a variety of injuries that have also not made the trip. Alphonso Davies is one of them. Jamal Musiala, Ismail Saibari, Lennart Karl and Serge Gnabry are the others. Mike Wisdom, another of the rising stars in the Bayern ranks, who has caught the eye already in pre-season. But given the fact that he dealt with a rather severe muscular injury in the previous campaign, Vincent Kompany, in discussion with Mike Wisdom, decided that he would not make the trip on the Asian tour. Nevertheless, Vincent Kompany ready to put his players through their paces once again. There he is, keeping a keen eye on everything in training. This is where the standards are set. And it might be pre-season, but things are starting to ramp up for Bayern and the Belgian boss. Mentioned the 2 friendlies they have as part of this Asia tour. When they get back, there is the Telecom Cup that will take place at the Allianz Arena, where the pitch is being relayed as we speak. RB Leipzig are the opponents on the 15th of August. And then competitive action gets underway on the 22nd when in the Franz Beckenbauer Super Cup, Bayern will travel to the Signal Iduna Park to take on Borussia Dortmund. A battle of the two sides that finished first and second in the Bundesliga last season, though it was Bayern with a dominant title win. Their 34th in the Bundesliga era, their 35th all-time, a 16-point lead they had over Niko Kovac's Chargers by the end of the 34 match days. They were just 2 points short of recording the best ever campaign in Bundesliga history. They would have finished level on points with the previous best of 91, but it was their goal difference that would have smashed the record, as it did the single season goal-scoring one in Germany's top flight. 122 goals scored. The previous best was set by, of course, none other than Bayern München. But that was back in 1972 under the legendary head coach Udo Lattek. And back then they scored 101. Of course, no pre-season tour would be complete without Bernie, the Bayern mascot, making the trip as well. It's not just the players that the fans want to get up close and personal with, take a photo. Maybe asking for an autograph is a step too far for Bernie, but he loves a good photo opportunity. He loves spending time with the Bayern fans. You've got to think he'll be feeling the heat just like the players. But he is sporting that new Bayern away kit. Though, admittedly, not without the specially designed numbers that will be on display tomorrow when Bayern take on Jeju SK. There was a collaboration with Hypebeast and Adidas. And as a result, a special shirt design deeply rooted in the local culture has been released in limited edition at a pop-up store in Jeju. Right now, after getting those legs warm, bit of one-touch football to get a feel of things with that beloved football back at their feet. Something tells me even in the summer off-season, a football would have never been far removed from many of these Bayern players. Of course, don't forget the Bayern staff would have given them individual programs to maintain fitness levels even while they were on holiday in various lavish destinations around the world, I'm sure. Joshua Kimmich. He is one of those players that brings that competitive element to every part of life as a Bayern München player, including training, including a one-touch passing drill. He has been described as militaristic in his approach, but he is one of the world's best in his position, and he wants the Bayern squad members to match those levels. It's part of the winning mentality that Bayern have always had, even before Vincent Kompany came on board, but he really has almost taken it back to the roots a little bit with Bayern in terms of re-establishing what many described as an aura of invincibility. Something that Bayern have often enjoyed since rising to supremacy. And Vincent Kompany has restored that supremacy. Back-to-back Bundesliga titles, a DFB Pokal last season to clinch a domestic double, courtesy of a 3-0 win against Stuttgart in Berlin. Harry Kane, the hat-trick scorer on that occasion. And he, like Kompany, like the rest of his team, will be hungry for more silverware in the season to come. And after coming up just short in the Champions League semi-finals against Paris Saint-Germain, something tells me they'll also want to maybe go one better in that regard as well. The portable fans, very much a trend this summer, not just in South Korea, but around Europe as well, where it has been a scorching summer. These players will be well used to the temperatures, of course, including the World Cup stars that featured in North America and faced some pretty brutal weather of all kinds, truth be told. There was some blaring sunshine, some crazy storms, games having to be delayed. You name it, we saw it. But how good is it to have these World Cup stars back? Even if it is just in Bayern training gear right now, but tomorrow it'll be Bayern kits, as we saw many of them return against Rotach Egen in the second of Bayern's pre-season friendlies so far. The first ended in a 2-1 defeat to Wien Wiesbaden, a side hailing from Germany's third tier. But they followed it up with a convincing 15-0 win against Rotach Egen, who hail from the 9th tier of German football. It's a traditional part of any training camp at Tegernsee. For Rotach Egen, it really is still a special moment, despite the fact that they often times end up on the wrong side of a pretty hefty scoreline. 2 seasons, or 2 meetings in a row now, I should say, in which Bayern haven't broken the 20-goal mark. Vincent Kompany, his Bayern career in pre-season almost coming a little bit full circle ahead of the start of his 3rd season in charge, because it was against Rotach Egen that he took charge of a Bayern friendly, which was his first after being announced as the new Bayern head coach. I mean, what a development that Bayern have undergone since then. An incredible restoration behind the scenes, building Bayern back up. A world-class squad, a formidable front line. Manuel Neuer, he might be 40 years old, but I tell you what, he's still got a lot in the locker, Manu. There are a lot of goalkeepers, players that would be mighty jealous of what Manuel Neuer is able to still achieve despite turning 40 earlier this year. Of course, I am keeping an eye on the Facebook chat, so if you do want to get in touch with a question, a comment, however you please, feel free to drop something in the chat. Of course, we always like to open the doors and say, let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. Bayern are in South Korea on Jeju Island. But where in the world are you? Because we always like to revel in the worldwide fan base that Bayern have. They are a global powerhouse of a football club, and it's nice to see them flying the flag for the Bundesliga, letting the international audience get up close and personal as well. They know the importance of making their presence felt abroad, and when you've got a superstar centre-back like Min Jae Kim on your books, then ultimately it's worth making the trip to South Korea, because the fans will show out in great number, and I believe tomorrow's friendly against the local side, Jeju SK, is almost sold out. But when it comes to where in the world you are, drop a flag in the chat or type it out, whichever you prefer. I've got a couple of questions already. Kuro saying Kane, question mark. Well, Harry Kane is one of the few players that has not returned and not joined up with the team ahead of the trip to Asia. There's sporting director Christoph Freund. He's talked about the fact that it's a big challenge, these players being drip-fed back into training, but ultimately a team like Bayern are well used to having star players involved in big tournaments during the summer, and as a result maybe not being able to return as early as usual. And Michael Olise, Dayot Upamecano, the French internationals as well, they were taking on Harry Kane and England in that 3rd place match at the World Cup. A belter of a game. Question about Olise as well. So just to remind you, he Diouf, Meccano, Harry Kane have not made the trip to Asia. Samuel says, I'm a Chelsea fan, good job. I'm watching from Liberia. Well, you could be a Chelsea fan and welcome along, although let's not forget that Chelsea dished out one of the most painful experiences that Bayern München have ever gone through in club history. The less said about it, the better. Nevertheless, I still want to extend the welcome. I was just talking about the players that haven't made the trip, the others being the players that have been making their way back from a variety of injuries, or even Jamal Musiala, who recently, after that horrible leg break last summer, has now had the metal plate removed, and as a result is undergoing an individual program to kind of work his way back once again after featuring at the World Cup for Germany in the summer. He really worked hard behind the scenes to make sure he could feature for his country. Although I think it's fair to say we could all tell that it was not Jamal Musiala at 100%. We're hoping that this season he can get back to that, put that horrific injury behind him and add to what was already a ridiculous attacking department. Harry Kane, Luis Diaz, Michael Olise, Lennart Karl, all getting the job done on a number of occasions last season. Jamal Musiala made his way back in the Rückrunde, the second half of the campaign, and we saw those flashes, that brilliance on the ball that only Jamal Musiala can have. He is certainly no longer Bambi, but he's going to have to find his feet again in a season in which we are hoping he stays fully fit for the entirety of it. But you've got to think having the metal plate removed will be a huge step in terms of his return to form. The other players that have stayed in Munich, Alphonso Davies, Ismail Saibari, who has turned up at Zebenstrasse. He has taken part in his first individual training session at Bayern's normal training ground. The man signed from PSV Eindhoven, a star of the World Cup for Morocco himself. Unfortunately picked up an injury in that defeat to France, and as a result he too has not made this trip to Asia, which would have been, you think, very beneficial for a player like Saibari, because it's a wonderful bonding experience for a new player. Nathaniel Brown, the man signed from Eintracht Frankfurt, talked about the beauty of pre-season, the fact that he's getting to know some of the new players. Of course, he spent time with some of the players that are in the German national team with him this summer. And even if it was a disappointing campaign, Brown certainly was one of the big winners. The South Korean fans giving that Bayern chant. It is just coming up to 6:20 in the evening local time. So the sun starting to set. Got a few more people that have got in touch in the chat. Again, Shadi says, I can't see Michael Olise. Oh, panic. No, don't worry. Michael Olise, he's enjoying a well-earned holiday, and he will be back with the team when they return to Munich. Something tells me he'll be back in training before then. Got Frederick tuning in from Liberia as well. Susan tuning in from Leicester, England, saying, I love Harry Kane. Well, I think you're in good company in that regard. Harry Kane, beloved to say the very least at Bayern, because what an impact he has made in a very short space of time. I think everyone was well aware that he was a world-class striker, but he has even taken it a step further under Vincent Kompany, who has given him even more freedom on a pitch to unlock the best of his abilities. And those abilities, they show up in front of goal. They show up in terms of the numbers of goal involvements. But I tell you what, if you watched his performances last season, especially in the absence of Jamal Musiala, who we were just talking about, the way he dropped deep and filled spaces that Musiala normally would have, and then sprayed unbelievable passes at times to link up the play, and then still had the pace to get forward and get in the positions that Bayern wanted him in front of goal, so he could provide a threat or provide a distraction, either or. Was absolutely staggering, and the numbers he put up, second best goal-scoring season in the history of modern football, behind only a certain Lionel Messi. Of course, one of the big open questions, open topics regarding Mr. Harry Kane is whether he will sign a contract extension. But if you listen to the people that know what they're talking about, and I'm talking about CEO Jan Christian Dreesen, Sporting Director Christoph Freundl, Board Director of Sport Max Abel, there is real interest on both sides to get a extension over the line. Who wouldn't say no to more Harry Kane with Bayern München? You look at the numbers he's put up since he joined the club. 44 goals in all competitions in his debut campaign. 41 last season. Disappointing maybe, perhaps, for some, but for others that would be an outstanding return. And then last season, 58 goals in all competitions for Bayern. A couple of players have been giving interviews since arriving in South Korea as well. Manuel Neuer, who just a couple of days ago marked what would have been the 15th anniversary of his first competitive appearance for Bayern. Since then, he's played 598 games, kept 269 clean sheets, and won 32 trophies for the club. He was talking to the South Korean media, saying whenever we train and play, whenever fans are present, we'll approach them and we'll be happy to sign autographs. All part of the connection that Bayern really love to foster and cater to in pre-season, because that's really when they have the most opportunities and best chances to get up close and personal with the fans. But he says we're not only doing this summer tour of Asia for the fans, we're also doing it for ourselves because we're in the middle of our pre-season. A couple of important games to play against Jeju tomorrow and then against Aston Villa in Hong Kong on Friday. And says that Bayern, as they always do, will approach them with 100% commitment and discipline. Konrad Laimer, meanwhile, the Austrian international, has talked about the fact that he is of the belief that Bayern can do even better. And as mentioned, when you fall short in the semi-finals of the Champions League, there is always room for improvement. And Bayern would love to get back to another European final. Unfortunately, the football gods are not on Bayern's side against Paris Saint-Germain. But elite football, elite sport, it's all about the disappointments, but it's also about the response afterwards. They are part of the game, the setbacks, the heartbreaks, and what Bayern put on display against Paris Saint-Germain across the two legs. Yes, in the first leg, they had a big phase of play where PSG really turned it on. They were 5-2 up at one point in that first leg, but Bayern battled their way back to make it 5-4, give themselves a fighting chance when they took the tie to Munich. And on another occasion, maybe with another referee, Bayern would have won that game in Munich and at the very least taken the tie to extra time, maybe even penalties. From there, who knows what would have happened. But these are all ifs and buts that I'm sure many of these players thought about in the aftermath of that game against PSG, but I would imagine probably not as prevalent in the thought patterns right now, because their focus will be on the 26-27 campaign. The focus on defending the Bundesliga title for a third straight time under Vincent Kompany. They'll also want to defend the DFB Pokal title they claimed for the first time since 2020 last season. That's the bread and butter. The Champions League is in some regards a bonus, but don't get me wrong, Bayern take that game very seriously, and they'd rather the bonus be getting their hands on what they call here in Germany the Henkelpot, for what would be a 7th time in club history. Konrad Laimer, one of the players in the year of 2026 that have signed a contract extension. Serge Gnabry, Dayot Upamecano and Manuel Neuer were the big ones before Konrad Laimer put pen to paper after the World Cup, extending until 2029. Told the media we can still play better football. Said we want to start the season with that mindset. Last season went well, but we can and want to do even better. And that, again, that is what Bayern München are all about, is it not? This Mir San Mir approach to life as a football club that then bleeds into that winner's mentality. New World Creation saying, good morning, boss, please. Is Musiala able to start the season with Bayern Munich? I'm Mohammed from Accra, Ghana. Well, thank you for getting in touch, Mohammed. And I think by all accounts, Jamal Musiala, whether he'll be ready for the full 90 minutes against Dortmund in the Franz Beckenbauer Super Cup, or whether he maybe starts the season coming off the bench, perhaps remains to be seen. It will all be down to how his body, how his leg reacts to the removal of that metal plate following the nasty leg break suffered in that challenge with Gianluigi Donnarumma against Paris Saint-Germain in the Club World Cup. But the fact is, he is going to play a much bigger role than he did last season. And considering the fact that Bayern had one of the most formidable front lines in world football, with one of the most formidable strikers ever seen, then adding Jamal Musiala back to that will be unbelievable. Frederick Alfonso Davies says, Bayern the greatest team in the world. Shaddai says, here watching and enjoying it from Zambia. Lily says, good luck for tomorrow against Jeju. Frederick says, here we go. We're going to win the Champions League. I like that confidence. We've got Letho Kuli. And I hope I didn't butcher that name. I apologize if I did. He says, greatest team in the world. He's tuning in from South Africa. Frederick saying, can the camera please show my big brother Alfonso Davies? Unfortunately not, Frederick. Alfonso Davies has stayed in Munich to recover, given the fact that his World Cup campaign was injury hit. He did make a return, but then when Canada were knocked out, he did not feature off the bench, suggesting that perhaps the issue hadn't fully resolved itself. And that's why Bayern don't want to take any unnecessary risks when you consider the fact that it's not just the intensity of training out here in Asia, as Luis Diaz turns on a bit of style in a one-on-one situation. Arion Ibrahimovic has been working on his first touch finishing. There was a clip put out on social media, a 10-ball drill involving him and head coach Vincent Kompany. He scored 6 of 10. He is a player that Bayern do believe has a role to play at the club this season. It might be as Luis Diaz's backup. Chance to give the Colombian maybe a bit more rest over the course of a season. And that will be an extra challenge for Vincent Kompany again. I mean, it's something that we talked about in the previous summer as Min Jae Kim gets a nice reception for a challenge one there. The South Korean who is planted on many a billboard in his own country. But the fact is, after Euro 2024, and then the Bundesliga season, then there was the Club World Cup, and then another Bundesliga season. Now the World Cup. Vincent Kompany needs to be wary of how much game time he gives to his best players. He's talked a lot about the fact that Bayern are a team that really know when they need to be at 100% in the campaign. But something tells me we might see a little bit more rotation from Vincent Kompany, the Belgian boss, in the first part of the 26-27 season, given the fact that the likes of Michael Olise, the likes of Harry Kane, Dayot Upamecano, Joshua Kimmich, so many players that have just been going absolutely non-stop. Valdemar says, I'm on my way to München right now. Well, unfortunately, that's not where Bayern are. There is no open training session at Zebenstrasse today, though I'm sure there will be before the season kicks off, which begins with the Franz Beckenbauer Super Cup on the 22nd of August. And then the first Bundesliga match, match day 1, on the 28th, Friday the 28th, the official season opener. Bayern will take on VfB Stuttgart in a southern showdown. A rerun of the DFB Pokal final that Bayern won 3-0, courtesy of a Harry Kane hat-trick. Stuttgart, the team that finished 4th last season, qualifying for the Champions League for a second time in 3 campaigns under Sebastian Hoeneß, who has a past with Bayern, of course, related to honorary president Uli Hoeneß, who's been rather vocal during the summer months, as he has a propensity to do. Ultimately, he's had a lot of positive things to say ahead of the start of this new season, though, when drawn on certain transfer rumours involving Bayern players leaving the club. He said many of them were laughable, and that he laughed himself dead, as they say here in Germany. It's rather morbid saying, but ultimately means that he just laughed a lot at the prospect of someone like Michael Olise or Luis Diaz leaving the club, because that's what Bayern are, a powerhouse that can keep their biggest players. Aaron Danks there in the middle of your picture in the cap, running the next drill. Vincent Kompany just on the left of your screen there. Always so hands-on, always so involved. Yes, he keeps a keen eye on things, but he will take these opportunities to have little chats with each individual player, pass on maybe one little thing here and there he's seen, whether it be from a particular drill or performance levels, physicality, you name it. He sees it all. He really does. He was involved in a press conference with Min Jae Kim earlier, right before this training session, where Bayern were presented with a cake in the shape of the Jeju World Cup Stadium. Whether they'll have cut it up and had a slice, I don't know. Maybe one of those fun facts that you might find in a behind-the-scenes bit of footage following Bayern on tour. But Kompany talked about the fact that he wanted to thank everyone for the warm welcome that Bayern have received since arriving on Jeju. Said he believes these trips are part of the preparation for most teams, so it's crucial that Bayern can travel, train and play under the best possible conditions. And here in South Korea, all of those conditions have been met. He said each of his pre-seasons has been different. This is his 3rd. He said last year was after the Club World Cup, which felt like the most difficult situation, but at least back then he had his full squad back together, even if it only was for a very short time before the first competitive matches. He said this time it's different again because everyone is returning at different times. He said some players are coming off of rehab, and ultimately Bayern want to integrate them gradually. He said it's a different puzzle that Bayern have to solve. but he's confident that his side will get the necessary match fitness and physical condition. As I think that was Tim Binder there, one of the teenage stars. Worth highlighting them as well. I haven't had a chance just yet. But you've got the young goalkeeper David Podar-Stiuber, who's made the trip. And you've got the likes of Felipe Chavez, Tim Binder, Filip Pavic, Maicon Cardoso, Baba Njai, Vincent Manuba, Guido Della Rovere, and the young 16-year-old striker who Vincent Kompany has been working closely with, Bastian Asomo. Every challenge battled for. That time it was an aerial duel between Sacha Bouet and Maicon Cardoso, one of those teenagers that made their senior debuts with Bayern last season. It's a wonderful facet of the 25-26 campaign that was record-breaking and so successful, and yet Vincent Kompany still found the time to give rising stars a chance to shine. And maybe, just maybe, Tim Binder, who just scored that goal after some brilliant work by Luis Diaz. Again, what a star he was for Colombia at the World Cup, even if there was a heartbreaking end to the campaign. Tim Binder might be one of the ones that makes his debut in the upcoming season. You go back to the previous campaign, Eblin Osmani, Filip Pavic, Cassiano Chiala, Maicon Cardoso, Felipe Chavez, Dennis Offley, David Santos Daiber, Bara Njai. These were all players, teenagers, that made debuts under Vincent Kompany last season. And Tim Binder was the man that scored the only goal of the game when Bayern lost 2-1 against Wien. Sorry, didn't score the only goal of the game, but certainly had one of the big highlights because he was the player that won the penalty that was converted by Tom Bischoff, that was the only goal of the game. A lovely bit of fleet-footed work out wide in a one-on-one situation. Beating his man, drawing the foul, earning the penalty. And that was a game in which Bayern started with a starting lineup purely made up of teenage players. Vincent Kompany saying that throughout pre-season, whether it be in training, whether it be in friendlies, it's all about making the most of every minute. Certain players have certainly caught the eye so far this summer. And you'd maybe argue that the quartet of Cardoso, Asomo, Binder and Pavic are the four biggest winners. Nice to hear that the local fans have brushed up on the Bayern songbook. Giving us a little taste of the Allianz Arena here at the Jeju World Cup Stadium. So go on, I'll throw a question out to you that are tuning in as we see Bernie again making his presence felt. Bayern's wonderful mascot, who has the number 12. But let me throw out a question to you guys. What's your prediction? What's your big prediction for next season? Maybe a hot take that you've got ahead of the start of the 26-27 campaign. And then another one. Who do you think will be a breakout young star? A bit like Leonard Karl or some of these youngsters that made their debut last season for Bayern. Could we see another really rise to prominence? And if so, who? Lovely touch by Joshua Kimmich, draws a few oohs and ahs. combining nicely here, Kimmich, but it was Min-jae Kim who stayed touch tight. Personally, I think for someone like Tim Binder, someone like Maicon Cardoso, chances might be limited given the amount of competition they have for their particular positions in this Bayern squad. But I just wonder whether someone like Filip Pavic might get a few opportunities. The young centre-back who made his debut for Bayern in the Champions League against Atalanta last season has caught the eye with a couple of standout performances in pre-season as well. At 17 years old, he's learning from an elite defender in Vincent Kompany. Could he maybe take the next step in his development? Love hearts put in the chat by Spiriano Banda. Seydu says FC Bayern, hand hearts emoji, 100 emoji, thumbs up emoji, handshake emoji, you name it, he's got all of them in there. Mohammed saying, thank you so much. This season, Champions League, it's us. Ready for more fire in the 26-27 campaign. Stanley says, I'm a die-hard Bayern fan from Zambia and wishing for two things. Said, I wish to see Harry Kane and Olise win their first Champions League with Bayern. They are such hard-working players and they deserve a Champions League. My second wish is to watch Jamal Musiala live with my eyes during my lifetime. Well, Bayern at heart. Well, Stanley, I hope that you at some point get to see Mr. Jamal Musiala live in the flesh, because I tell you what, it is a sight to behold. And you've really got to see him live to truly appreciate everything he brings to a football match, beyond just those delicate first touches, the ability to glide past defenders, ride challenges that seem impossible to ride. He might have started with the nickname of Bambi, given the fact that he looked a little leggy at times. But he's worked really hard behind the scenes, Jamal Musiala, to build his athletic ability, build up a bit of muscle and physical presence as well. And that's without giving up his wonderful skill set that really sets him apart. Mohamed says, for me, I really want to see David Santos Daiber play more games next season. I tell you what, yeah, he's a really tidy player. And you never know. Right now, Joshua Kimmich and Alexander Pavlovic look to be the first choice pairing in holding midfield, but right behind them, Tom Bischoff, Barra and Jai, David Santos Daiber, there might be opportunities afforded to a player like Santos Daiber. Should mention Joao Palhinha as well, though. The club have been quite open and honest about the circumstances involving Joao Palhinha. Board Director of Sport, Max Abel, saying that the club are certainly exploring options for Joao Palhinha, Sasha Boué and Brian Zaragoza to leave the club, but said that ultimately they're entitled to stay with Bayern. It's really the fact that right now there's not a real role available for those three players in Vincent Kompany's side. It doesn't prevent them from training with Bayern and ultimately fighting for more minutes perhaps. And it's a similar situation to the one we had with Leon Goretzka, where he seemed on the outs. No one was really standing in his way of leaving the club if he found the right move or wanted to, but he wanted to stay and fight for his place. Of course, with the three players I've just mentioned, Palhinha, Brian and Boué, the situation is similar, but it's not identical, because Leon Goretzka had been at the club for a lot longer. His standing with Bayern was a lot better. He had a reputation. He was a German international. Palhinha, Boué, Zaragoza have all been on the books for a very short time at Bayern. And as a result, the avenue for them to fight back into the contention for first-team affairs would be even more difficult for all three of them. Joao Palhinha spent last season on loan with Tottenham, where he was almost relegated in the Premier League. Scored some very important goals that without those efforts, Tottenham probably would not have stayed up. But unfortunately, competition for places in the Bayern midfield is fierce. There's a look at Nathaniel Brown, the man who is one of two summer signings for Bayern, brought in from Eintracht Frankfurt. Eintracht Frankfurt had a very turbulent season. I'll just stop what I'm saying, because nice moment here. The South Korean fans singing happy birthday. I can only assume that's to Sven Ulreich. Bayern's backup goalkeeper today, turning 38, Sven Ulreich. A player that, since joining the club, has been through a lot. And there you see, taking his moment just to show his appreciation for the happy birthday rendition. Not many of those previous 37 birthdays, I'm sure, would have been celebrated in a place like South Korea. Many of those birthdays will have fallen during pre-season, which would have probably limited the ability to celebrate properly. But a nice moment there for Sven Ulreich with the local fans. Player that really has endeared himself to the Bayern fan base for his willingness to just play the role of deputy behind Manuel Neuer. And Manuel Neuer gives him glowing reviews from his work behind the scenes in keeping everyone sharp in the goalkeeping department. And every now and again, as we saw last season even, Sven Ulreich did have to get drafted in for a match, and Manuel Neuer and Jonas Urbig got injured. He can still step up between the sticks and do a decent job. Of course, he's had some, and I won't go into details, but some torrid times off the pitch in terms of in his personal life. But Bayern have been really good at supporting him. So now the session breaking down into more individual drills, as opposed to the team dynamic we were being treated to. I'm just going back to the chat. Klaus says, liebe Grüße aus München. So, best wishes from Munich. And here's to a successful season, Mir San Mir. Nazir says, I love Kompany so much because he is our boss boy Guardiola. Well, I think that's a compliment. Ultimately, Vincent Kompany, a disciple of Pep Guardiola, who has now departed Manchester City. So, be interesting to see how they fare in Europe next season. Bayern will once again be amongst the favourites for the Champions League because of the progress made under Vincent Kompany. Nice finish there from the 16-year-old Bastian Asamoah. He is a name to remember. Vincent Kompany has made the point that not everyone makes the breakthrough at a club like Bayern, but Asamoah is someone that at 16 years old, he has all the attributes and abilities needed. The question is whether he can maintain his trajectory, stay injury-free, which is always so important for young players as well. But he's gotten some glowing reviews from Vincent Kompany in pre-season. Bastian Asamoah. Z Medang is tuning in from Gabon. Says, Mir San Mir, Rekordmeister. Mezi Dias says, my favourite Bayern München. couple of Stern de Zuiden's comments in there as well. But again, if you've got a question, you've got a comment, feel free to drop them in the chats. I'm always open to answering as many as I can. There might be questions asked that I'm not allowed to answer, because we like to be respectful here on the Bayern live streams. And of course, it's very easy to fall in the trap of asking questions about transfer rumours, but I can already tell you right now, I have no insider information. I do not have a direct line to Christoph Freund or board director of sport Max Abel. Truth be told, I don't think I really want one either. But as a result, I have no insider information when it comes to transfer rumours. And Bayern are a club that are quite open and honest, forthright as well with their plans. And Max Abel was talking at the official unveiling of Nathaniel Brown, saying that Bayern have made their 2 signings. Brown's come in from Eintracht Frankfurt. Zaibari's joined from PSV Eindhoven. And Bayern have no need to do more business and have no real intention of doing any more business either. Because again, while they are happy to dip into the transfer market, something that's changed with Bayern in the last couple of years is they really want to find internal solutions and not just external ones. And that's why Vincent Kompany has given so many youngsters their debuts. That's why he's gotten a look at them in training with the senior squad. He's gotten a look at them in competitive action. Tom Bischoff, seen as the future of the Bayern midfield, along with Alexander Pavlovic. First season with the club after joining from Hoffenheim. Saw him fill in a variety of different roles that weren't necessarily as natural one as a holding midfielder. He got a couple of appearances in that particular position as well. But he filled in at right back, left back. Wherever Vincent Kompany needed him, Tom Bischoff was willing to step in. But he's talked about in his second season wanting to take the next step in his own development. He also wants to shoulder more responsibility. And by all accounts, with Leon Goretzka leaving the club, Tom Bischoff should get even more minutes under his belt than he did last season. He made 38 appearances in all competitions, scoring 3 goals. But the majority of those were as a substitute, as opposed to as a starter. Lots of different drills. The midfielders going through the passing routines. The forwards, it's all about runs into the box and first-time finishes. The coach is doing a bit of defending. Stanisic, the provider, and, well, his fellow fullback, Konrad Laimer, the finisher. Although Konrad Laimer has himself admitted that he's not really sure where he's going to play next season. He's signed that contract extension till 2029. He said he was always very relaxed about the whole situation. He said that he's ultimately happy that everything worked out. The deal is now done. Underlines the fact that, of course, it's a lot of fun playing with Bayern München. But he said he's ready to keep pushing, keep improving. But as mentioned, he said he doesn't really know what position he's going to play. And he says he's very comfortable in a lot of different positions. He says over the last 2 years, I've mostly played at right back, but also occasionally at left back. Remember the press conference from last season where Vincent Kompany basically said that between Josip Stanisic and Konrad Laimer, there's neither one that's really better right or left. It really is simply about a preference of on the day, maybe who feels more comfortable in either position. But Konrad Laimer is someone that is convinced he can help the team with his qualities. It doesn't matter where he plays as long as he's out on the pitch. Got a lovely shot there of the Jeju World Cup Stadium, which has an air of the Munich Olympia Stadion to it, in terms of one side of the ground being covered by a roof. It's been a long time since Bayern featured at the Olympia Stadion, though. The Allianz Arena is now their home, and a very successful one as well. Plenty of concerts have been taking place at the Allianz Arena over the course of the summer, but now the focus returns to the football. I just wonder whether Nathaniel Brown's picked up a bit of a knock. He's been talking to the staff a little bit here on the sidelines, but maybe he's just not involved in one of the drills right now. And I think it's fair to say he's made a good first impression. He's born in Bavaria, even if he was playing for Eintracht Frankfurt, so he said it was special to join Bayern, though admitted he didn't have any Thomas Müller bed sheets growing up as a kid. Patience and penetration. That's what this drill is all about. Stringing a couple of passes together, not all the time, but then finding that penetrative pass to break the lines. Made up of the coaching staff, René Maric, the one furthest away from the camera. Look at the ball just pinging about, first touches. Top quality stuff. But even on the stretch, Joshua Kimmich can provide a good pass. Plenty of fans gathered. We're approaching 7 o'clock local time in the evening now. And again, when the training session ends, Bayern will spend a bit of time taking photos, signing autographs with those in attendance. Maybe not everyone will be able to get up close and personal with their favourite players, but Bayern are well aware of who football belongs to, even if it's maybe been forgotten elsewhere. Football belongs to the fans. These players, this club would be nothing without the fans. Tournaments, institutions, the same goes for them. Without the fans, football really is nothing, and the fans stay at the forefront here in German football culture, which is one of the reasons why the German football scene is so attractive to many. Manuel Neuer, the interested onlooker here, has talked about the fact that this will likely be his final season in professional football. When he was asked about it, mentioned the fact that with 85% of cases he might have hung up his gloves already. But the fun he's having with Bayern, the winners' medals he's adding to his collection with Bayern, this squad, this head coach. He says he's having so much fun that Bayern ultimately belong to the 15%, and that's why he feels he's got at least another year in him. And you never know, he might leave it late in the season and do a U-turn again and decide he's got actually one more as well. You just never know with someone like Manu Neuer. Turned 40 back on the 27th of March. A man who names Jens Lehmann, Oliver Kahn and Edwin van der Sar as his goalkeeping idols. You can see there, look, Bernie's ready. And ultimately, these South Korean fans are ready as well. And something tells me Min Jae might be a name on the back of many a kit that's going to get a signature in a second. Min Jae Kim might be the player that needs to stay a little bit longer. But look, he's not the only one. And I tell you what, I'm always someone that maintains that football is an international sport. There are South Korean fans that are just as passionate about Bayern München as there are fans in your local Bavarian Kneipen, the local bars and taverns where the locals will frequent. And now you can see the signing begins, and calm is needed, but it's not easy. But look, Konrad Laimer signing his own kit in South Korea. If you'd have told Konrad Laimer that 5 years ago, I'm not sure he'd have believed you. Gotta love that retro opal kit there, the grey one. Oh, that brings back some memories. Got the mini Meisterschale fans. Everyone trying to get their pens at the ready. Selfies being taken. Are you getting the signature of an established star, or maybe one for the future like Maicon Cardoso? Now, this is why the fans turn out. This is why these moments are special. A training session in public, live, a transfer. People that would never be able to see Bayern up close and personal at the Allianz Arena, able to see them take to the pitch here at the Jeju World Cup Stadium. And I'm sure many of the fans in attendance today will be in attendance tomorrow when Bayern take on Jeju SK, the local side, in the first of two friendlies as part of this Asian Summer Tour. The second pits them against Europa League champions Aston Villa in Hong Kong on Friday. Manuel Neuer just needing a little space, but he knows what he's doing when it comes to moments like this, and signing every article of clothing imaginable. Is this Manuel Neuer's final pre-season, his final tour of Asia as a Bayern player? I mean, given the success he's had in his career, he certainly doesn't need a life in football afterwards, but it's almost impossible to imagine the world of football without Manuel Neuer. Is he one for his coaching badges? Is he one for a role in a club hierarchy? Maybe with the German Football Association? Yeah, you just never know. Look at that. That is the first Min Jae Kim signature dished out this afternoon on the new Bayern away kit and all. I've got to admit, the Bayern kits this season, I mean, chef's kiss, eh? Absolutely delightful. The designers have got it spot on. Some very catchy numbers. Just going back to the chat. Mohammed saying, my prayer is to come and watch Bayern play a game in Germany one day at the Allianz Arena. I love Bayern so much. Well, I hope that dream comes true, Mohammed. Good luck is saying, my dream is to play for Bayern. Well, that dream's a little bit tougher. Might be easy to get Mohammed to the Allianz Arena, truth be told, because getting into this Bayern side, woof, it is not for the faint of heart. Ali is tuning in from Morocco and says the 7th Champions League must be this year, as all's numbers said so. And so with the training session broken down, with the players spending a bit of time with the local fans that have turned up today, it's time for me to bid you farewell from this live training session. Thank you for joining wherever in the world you tuned in from. The players were put through their paces. We saw some nice drills in terms of pressing and line breaking. The fans in attendance were treated to a few eye-catching goals in a rather unique match experience. And ultimately, this all the warm-up ahead of tomorrow's friendly against Jeju SK as part of this Audi Football Summit. You can tune in tomorrow on FC Bayern TV Plus for coverage of that game. Bayern in their third pre-season friendly ahead of the start of the 26-27 campaign. But from me, James Surrogate, thanks for joining today. Bayern kicking off their Asian summer tour in style. All part of this 8-day trip. And you can catch coverage of it all on Bayern's channels. So tune in whichever channel you choose to see Manuel Neuer and company in action. For now, enjoy the rest of your Monday.